Thank you for that introduction. You know, a few years ago, I was speaking to a group like this, and the person introducing me gave an introduction of my background, and then the last thing she said was, and model husband, McKay Christensen. So I came up to the stage, delivered my message, went home, told my wife, model husband. They said it at the presentation, I am model husband. She didn't say a word. She just walked into the other room. She came back with dictionary in hand and read to me the definition of model. It said, a non-functioning replica of the exact same thing. That is exactly what I am. It's a pleasure to be here today. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about your leadership and how to be fully functioning. Because it's easy from time to time, isn't it? To think that we are a bit of a replica from time to time in how we lead. And we wonder just how others perceive our leadership. Jeff Bezos famously said, I think I've got this on the slide, famously said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So what is your leadership brand? Do you know what it is? Let's ask more generically, what's a leadership brand? This is the participation part of the program. What is a leadership brand? The culture you create. Good. What else? The reputation you develop over time. What else? Your identity as a leader. Agreed. The perception people hold of you. All of these things make up what our leadership brand is. The question is, what is your leadership brand? And do you build it intentionally? You know, I started my career out of graduate school at Procter & Gamble, and we had a lot of brands. And whether it was Tide, Crest, or Old Spice, or any of the dozens of other brands that we led, each of those brands had a brand promise. That brand promise said to the consumer what you can expect from our brand. Old Spice's brand promise, for example, was to empower men to be bold, confident, and unforgettable. So maybe you also should have a brand promise, a promise that you extend to those who follow you that they can rely on. At P&G, we carefully crafted and wrote down our brand promises. They were based on the consumer's need. They were based on what we could do and how we could compete in the marketplace and how we wanted to develop that identity with a consumer. So what about your leadership brand promise? Have you ever written your leadership brand promise? Well, today here with this conference, with Rise in its name, then, let's rise a little bit in our understanding of leadership, and let's talk about how to help develop our leadership brand. Fair enough? Now, this year is America's 250th celebration going on across the country of the establishment of our independence, America 250. If we look to a few of our founding fathers, we might see some leadership brand promises at work. George Washington, at the end of the Revolutionary War, was perhaps the most powerful person here in America. He had served 2 terms as president. He could wield that power to do great good, but he chose not to run for a 3rd term. People think, well, wasn't the two-term limit in place? No, that didn't happen until the 22nd Amendment in 1951. Washington knew that if he used his influence and power for his own good, that he would no longer be the type of leader that he wanted to be. So he stepped aside. You could say his leadership brand was service over self-interest. Leadership exists not for yourself, but for others. In 1775, John Hancock was named the head of the Continental Congress. He's most famous for, as you know, for putting his name on the Declaration of Independence. It did not happen on July 4th. He put his name on it shortly thereafter. The rest didn't sign that document until August 5th or 2nd, 5th, or later. But that isn't his crowning achievement as a leader. That happened later. You see, at the time, the Articles of Confederation were a friendly agreement between the states. There was no power to enforce laws. There was no taxing authority. None of these things existed. This was a friendly agreement, and anything that had to be done by unanimous vote of all the colonies and states. So nothing really got done. Over the years, Congress tried to form some type of constitution, but states had objections. They wanted a Bill of Rights. They couldn't come to agreement on what it was. And year after year of trying, finally, in 1788, a form of constitution had come together. Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, was the linchpin in ratifying that constitution. And this is where John Hancock brought his leadership to bear. You see, over the years, he had given almost all of his wealth to the people of Boston during the Revolutionary War. He served in the war. He served 5 times as governor of the state of Massachusetts. The time for ratification came, and Hancock had opposed it up to that point in time. But on that day, he stood in front of everyone in attendance and spoke to them about what this nation could become. That if we could unite behind a ruling document like this Constitution, we could become a model for the rest of the world and cast a vision of who we could be. Even Samuel Adams, who didn't like Hancock at all, stood in support. And when the vote was taken, 187 to 168, and it passed. Almost every historian agrees that without John Hancock, the Articles of, meaning our Constitution, would not exist today. What was his brand? Loyal service that creates the influence to help others see the possibilities of their future. This is a powerful concept. The Japanese have a saying, Ino naka no kawazu takai o shirazu. And it means, a frog in a well cannot conceive of the ocean. In other words, you cannot be what you cannot see. Your team, your organization, you yourselves, your family cannot be what they can't see. And no change, individual, organization, or otherwise, can happen unless we can get a new view, unless we can see things as they really are. This is an incredibly powerful concept. And this concept has incredible power in your brand promise. There was an English teacher not long ago who was teaching her class, and she noticed as she was teaching that there was a student named Sarah sitting in the class doodling every time she taught. She was a bit frustrated, and one day she walked over and looked at that student's paper, and she noticed that what Sarah was writing in the margins of her paper wasn't doodling, it was poems. So she suggested to Sarah that Sarah put her poem in to the writing contest that was being held at the school, and Sarah did. Sarah would go on to graduate. She would go on to become a very prolific writer and publish, and a very famous author. In her first book, Sarah says, "To my English teacher, who saw me before I saw me." Isn't that what great leaders do? Shouldn't your leadership brand be to help people see who they are before they see who they are? My PhD research and postgraduate research was on this very topic. We tried to isolate and find what made influential leaders influential. So we surveyed and subjected to a battery of tests hundreds of leaders across the United States and Canada to see what the influential leaders did compared to their not-so-influential counterparts. What we found and what we published was quite amazing. We found one Really powerful concept. And it was this, and it came forward in the interviews that we did with many of these leaders. One after another said essentially the same thing, and that was, I don't see people on my team as they are today. I see people as they can be tomorrow. This is so powerful. What a powerful leadership concept, because they didn't need to use techniques of leadership. This view into people to see their potential caused them to be genuinely authentic. And the people that were following these leaders could read that authentic nature in them, and they said, I want to follow. Wouldn't it be awesome if your leadership brand was, I help others see who they can be? Now, this is an incredibly powerful concept. Who in here has a 9-year-old or 10-year-old son or daughter? Okay, right here. What's your name, ma'am? Rebecca. What if you had a vision? And I mean, this was straight from heaven. And is your child a boy or a girl? If you knew that your 9-year-old son, I mean, it was absolutely certain that your 9-year-old son would grow up to be a world-renowned heart surgeon. Let's say that was fact. How would you treat him? Like a heart surgeon. Would you enroll him in science class? When he failed his first science test, what would you do? You would, wouldn't you? Meaning, because you see that in him, all of a sudden your behavior would almost be self-fulfilling for his achieving the goal. Does that make sense? This is an incredibly powerful concept that when you can lead by seeing the potential in the people that you work with and acting accordingly, you have immense influence. I know this firsthand. When I was a young man, I worked to earn a little extra money on a sod farm. As you know, sod is the grass that you cut up from a farm, bring to your house, lay it down, and you have instant green lawn, right? On this sod farm, we worked on the back of a large harvester. This large harvester weighed 14 tons. And we would stand on the back of the harvester, and the platform that we stood on had 2 sets of dual wheels. We would stand on this platform and we would stack the strips of sod as they would come off of the harvester after they were cut. On this day, we were moving the harvester from one end of the field to the other. My friend was sitting on the platform. The 4 wheels underneath him were spinning this direction, and he was sitting with his legs hanging over the side of the wheels. I was walking alongside the harvester with him and thought, okay, well, I'm going to jump up and sit next to him. I jumped up, and I jumped too far. The machine was moving about 2 miles per hour. I landed in front of the wheels, and because of my cat-like reflexes, I landed on my feet. But before I could jump out of the way, the wheel caught my foot, and I had on high-top sneakers, and I could not pull my foot out of the way of the wheel. So it started to roll up my leg, and it threw me onto my side. Now I was in quite a predicament. Here I was, this 14-ton harvester, and the 4 wheels underneath one of these platforms was about to run over me from my feet to my head, and there was nothing that I could do about it. As it ran up over my knee, it broke my femur in half right here. As it came to my pelvis crushed like this and turned sideways. As it turned me to my side like this, it ran over my chest cavity, breaking most of my ribs, breaking my back in 2 places, and just barely missing my head and rolling off of me. The minute that it rolled off of me, I passed out. When I came to, I just couldn't breathe. I had this immense pain. My whole body was filled with pain, and I was in panic mode, and I couldn't catch my breath. What I didn't know was I had a bilateral pneumothorax. That means my lungs had collapsed. When the air leaves your leaves your lungs, it goes into your chest cavity, and it can't escape. So now it's pushing your lungs together like a wet paper sack, and you cannot breathe. In order to breathe, you have to create more space in your chest cavity, and remember, almost all of my ribs were broken. To breathe was incredibly painful. With all of this going on, the anxiety inside of me was rising. My heart rate was up, and I just knew, there wasn't a doubt in my mind, that in a matter of seconds I was going to close my eyes and I was going to die. Nothing else had entered into my mind other than I was waiting for that moment to happen. Stan, the farm manager, came running up. He knelt down on his knees. He asked me if I could move my legs. I couldn't respond. I couldn't talk. He took my head in his hands, and he started to talk to me. What possessed him to do this, I have no idea. But he started to talk. He said, "McKay, you're going to live." Up until that point in time, that thought had never entered into my mind. I started to believe a little bit. He said, "You're going to walk again." He went on, "You're going to graduate from high school. You're going to go to college." And every time he started to make a statement, my mind started to focus a bit more on what he said. It was like there was this tug of war going on inside of me. On one side, I just wanted to close my eyes and let everything go and give in to the pain. On the other side, the words that he was saying to me were pulling me back in this direction. "You're going to be a leader," he said. "You're going to have a family." And he kept making these proclamations to me in what he said. And I started to say to myself, I can hold on for a minute. I can do this for 1 minute. And then I can do this for 2, and I can do this for 3. And on it went until the ambulance showed up. The first thing that the ambulance did was the doctor ordered a chest tube to be inserted so that I could breathe. So they cut through my chest right here, hurt so incredibly bad. But once the tube was in and the air was evacuated, I could breathe a little bit better. I spent a year recovering from the accident. I still have issues today with my health as a result. It took a long time. I didn't know if I would really walk like I had before again. But every time I went to physical therapy, you know what I thought of? What Stan said. You'll walk again. I went to college. Every time I felt like giving up, you know what I remembered? What Stan said. You'll graduate from college. My entire life, I have remembered the words that he spoke to me, and they have been what sustained me through those difficult times. Your words have power. What you say, how you believe, the things that you say to others in your leadership have significant impact. So do you work on your words? Does your leadership brand, do you work on that? Is your brand one of those things where people say, every time I was around her, she made me feel like I could? Your words have power. One of the great psychologists coined the term that words create worlds. And he was right. He believed that your words create the scaffolding that exists around people's belief until they can build that belief themselves. Your words have immense power. I'll give you a for instance. So I run a foundation. It's one of the larger foundations in the Mountain West. We have about 900 employees. And much of what I do is fundraising. I don't like it. I was telling someone today that when I die and they put me in the casket, they will not be able to shut the door because my arm will be outstretched like this, still asking for money when I'm laid in the casket. I was doing a lunch not long ago with a person who was going to partner up with us. And I was about halfway done with our discussion, and he said, "McKay, would you mind if I gave you a little advice?" I said, "No, please." He said, You haven't told me what this community and your foundation will be like 10 years from now if I partner up with you." And he was right. I hadn't used my words in what I was selling and what I was asking to really paint a picture of what will be different in the future. You want to have a leadership brand with your kids? Get good at helping to paint a picture of how they will be different 10 years from now if they make the choices that you're asking them to make. A bunch of students at MIT not long ago showed up for class, and they were pretty excited because their professor was sick, or so they were told. It was really a research project that was going on. And when they got into the classroom, the facilitator said, "You're going to have a substitute teacher." And they gave each of the students a description, a written description of the substitute teacher, which started with these words. In that description, there was simply one word that was different between the two groups. Half of the group got the word warm in the description, and the other half of the group got the word cold. They all sat through the same lecture. They all listened to the same professor. When it was over, a questionnaire was administered. And would it surprise you that the students who got the word warm said he was humorous, he was concerned about others, and he was warm-hearted. And the people who got the cold description said he was self-centered, he was egotistic, and I wouldn't want to have the class from him again. One word made all the difference. In your leadership brand, in your brand of leadership, one word can and does make all the difference. Words create belief. Imagine, if you will, that there's a wire coming out of the back of your head, and that wire comes out, and it comes over in front of your eyes, and there it holds in place a frame. And in that frame is a window. This is your belief window, and we all have one. No matter where you look, no matter what happens during the day, that belief window is always in front of you. Each day, oceans of data are filtered by your belief window. Consciously and subconsciously, you're interpreting social interactions, you're interpreting things that are said, you're interpreting things that you see, and those things are filed away in your brain based on your belief window. We all have beliefs on our belief window. Smart or dumb. Capable or not. We place beliefs on our window, whether they were placed there by us or maybe even by others. We carry them with us all the time. The great thing about belief windows is you can pull out your belief window and put in a new belief window. It can be done. The bad part about belief windows is we often place erroneous perceptions on our belief window, and they tend to direct our life. You don't think so? Talk to your 9-year-old son, because your 9-year-old son is already holding perceptions on his belief window that is directing his decision-making and making up his identity that he will follow later in life. Tyler Vigen was graduated from law school, and when he did, he went on a really fun search for identical twins. Not twins in the way you and I think of them, but data sets. For example, he found perfect correlation between per capita cheese consumption and the number of people who died in bed. He also found perfect correlation between the number of Nicolas Cage movies released each year and the people who drown in swimming pools. Is that accurate? Is that correlation truth? No, if it was, then every time Nick Cage releases a movie, someone will throw themselves in the pool and drown, right? It seems true, but it's erroneous. This happens to us all the time. We place, and the people who follow you, place erroneous conclusions on their belief window based on things they perceive to be true, but are not at all true. Your children do it all the time. My daughter, when she went to college, I said to her, "Are you going to take an accounting class?" She said, "No. First of all, I was shocked that she would want to take an accounting class. I said, why? She said, I'm not good at accounting, Dad. I said, okay. And I wonder what belief got placed on her belief window to say that she wasn't good at accounting. And when I asked her further, she said, because I'm not good at math. And the truth is, accounting isn't that much math. It's really a language. It's a language of how you identify and classify things much more than it is math. But she had some belief on her belief window that was formed erroneously. Great leaders, as part of their leadership brand, help people place correct beliefs on their belief window and then nurture those. Imagine if your leadership brand did that. All right, let's move to another suggestion for your leadership brand. Imagine if you were driving down I-15 at 200 miles an hour, and not only are you driving, but there are cars all around you driving within 18 inches, in front of you, to the side of you, and behind you. And that means if you make any sort of move or mistake or slow down or speed up, you're going to cause an accident. Well, that's what it's like to drive in NASCAR. When you drive a stock car, that's about what you experience. Years ago in the Daytona 500, on lap 173, there was an accident. Dale Earnhardt Sr. radioed to his son, Dale Jr., and Michael Waltrip on his team were ahead of him, and he said, when we start up again, you guys take off, I will block. Meaning, he was going to block the cars behind them. This is an actual picture of that start. As they got restarted, and when they got to the last lap, Dale Earnhardt Sr. was moving back and forth to keep the cars from passing him. And Dale Jr. and Michael Waltrip won the race. But on the last turn, a car bumped into Dale Sr., pushed him into the railing, came down into the interior of the field, and a driver got out to check on him and came walking away with his head shaking like this, and Dale Sr. passed away. At his memorial service, Dale Jr. said something profound. He said, my dad told me once, Dale, if you ever want to win in NASCAR, you've got to unhook that boat that you're dragging behind your race car and race. Now, while not the most elegant analogy, it's rather profound. I think all of us lead or race in life with a boat behind us. It's those things we don't want to let go of. It's those comforts. We want to lead, we want to have influence, but we don't want to sacrifice, lead by example, or really work at it. We just want leadership to happen automatically. We're dragging along excuses as to why our organization can't, or a person who works for us can't, or we can't. There is something powerful when you decide as a leader to unhook that boat, to unhook the excuses, and move forward, taking full responsibility for where you and your organization will stand. This is a tremendous example to those who follow, because if you do, they will do the same. Not long ago, so I have a bit of a goal. Sometimes I hit it, most of the time I hit it, sometimes I don't, but I try to read a book a week. And not long ago, I read a book that changed my thinking for quite a while. You've probably read the book. It's Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. In this book, Stephen talks about what it's like to be a writer. And he says this right here, if I can come back to it. There's a secret that real writers know that wannabe writers don't. And the secret is this: it's not the writing part that's hard. What's hard is sitting down to write. What keeps us from sitting down is resistance. If you want to experience resistance, start a new diet. Start an exercise program. Try to change a habit. Get your organization to change something significant in its culture or its processes. This is resistance. But then Stephen goes on to teach a principle that allows you to overcome resistance in a single moment. And here's his principle. He says, if you've been doing what you've been doing for a while, and that means most of you in this room, If you've been doing what you've been doing for a while, everything will change when you realize you are a pro. You are no longer an amateur. He says when he became a screenwriter, he and his partner wrote a script for a movie, and it was made. They had Linda Hamilton as the star, and it was done, and he invited his friends to the premiere, and very few people showed up, and after the premiere was over, very few people clapped, and he said, "Oh, I failed. How could this be? We worked so hard on it." And after he lamented for a while to his partner said, "Are you going to quit?" He said, "No." And that was when he realized he was a pro. You know, in 2012, the U.S. men's Olympic basketball team went to Barcelona for exhibition games. As the story goes, on one of the first nights there, the players, including LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony, went out on the town. And they got back about 5 o'clock in the morning. As they were coming into the hotel, coming down from the elevator from his room was Kobe Bryant. He had on his workout gear, and he was going to the gym to work out. They asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to work out. This is what we do." They went to bed, and at noon, when they came back down to begin practice, Kobe was just finishing with his workout. Dwayne Wade said, "From that night on, all of us realized what it took to be a pro. And we were there every morning with Kobe Bryant in the gym." See, that's what pros do. Doesn't matter what your mood is, you're a pro. You do it anyway. Doesn't matter what circumstances have come your way lately, you're a pro. You overcome them. I've used this concept with people who work for me so many times to help them realize this is what pros do. Pros read a book a week. Pros work hard at their leadership brand. Pros write down the type of leader they want to be. Pros do a few other things. Brian Tracy said this statement, and it doesn't have a lot of great rhyme or meter, but it had a profound effect on me. Here it is. Successful leaders have very clear goals. They know who they are and what they want. They write them down and make plans for their accomplishment. You may say, "Well, duh, obvious." It would surprise you how few leaders actually do this, actually get very clear about their goals. Let me tell you about the power of this. So Sarah Talmas was going through breast cancer. To help her get her motivated coming out of her treatment, she decided to set a goal to swim the English Channel 4 times. Something had never been done by man or woman. Now, if you've been to the Strait of Dover and seen the English Channel, it is the most heavily trafficked waterway in the world. It is also fierce in terms of its currents and the winds that happen on the English Channel. It is not an easy swim. But Sarah, at age 37, at her highest weight ever, coming out of cancer treatment, started training for this swim. The swim she expected would take her about 54 hours straight. Every 2 hours, she'd get a high-calorie protein drink, and she would swim through 2 nights in order to reach her goal. She did it. She expected to swim 84 miles. She had to swim 134 miles. This is the GPS map of her swim. The red dots you see are time intervals. Tell me what you see about this GPS map. What do you notice? Course corrections. A lot of course corrections. Do you see a straight line? You don't see a straight line. Consistency. Agree with that. What else? The red dot, by the way, is her last day. She arrived at the red dot at 6:30 in the morning after a night of swimming. What do you notice about her last line connecting to that red dot? Say it again. a lot closer together. Look what she had to swim. Looks like the current took her way off track. And then in order to get back, she had to swim against that current. And those dots are right next to each other. She was making very little progress. Can you believe that was at the end of the 134 miles that she swam? What lessons do you learn? Say it again. You have to stay in the game. Every one of you in this room are trying to do something remarkable. You're trying to lead, to define your brand, to bring a team with you, to do something that you feel passionate about. Staying in the game is one of the most important leadership skills and part of your brand promise that you can give to your team. What else do you learn from this? Don't quit. It is going to take way more work than you think. If you're sitting here in this room and saying, I haven't seen very many straight lines in my business lately, welcome to the club. There are no straight lines. It does not happen. There are no straight lines in life. There might be very few straight lines in life. If a leader can communicate that to an organization and set expectations about the power of staying in the game, and yes, leaders know that seasons come and go, and we may not be in the midst of our best season today, but if we stay in the game, our season is coming. I think sometimes we give away our confidence too easy. The Apostle Paul said, cast not away thy confidence, which has the promise of great reward. Imagine if your leadership brand was one that when people followed you or were with you, they left with confidence. Would be a powerful thing. So, as we think about your leadership brand, I will tell you there is something magical that will happen if you will write it. If you will be thoughtful about what type of leader you want to be, and if you will write your promise as to what your brand will do consistently, you will see a difference in your leadership. You know, the great Tony Robbins once said, one reason so few of us achieve what we never achieve, one reason so few of us achieve what we want to is that we never direct our focus. We never concentrate our power. Most people dabble their way through life, never deciding to master anything in particular. In fact, I believe most people fail in life simply because they major in minor things. There is power when you get focused on your leadership brand. So, what will your brand say? If I were to ask you today to write it, what would you write down? This is my leadership brand promise. What would you write? My leadership brand promise is to see the potential in those I lead and to use a voice of belief and courage to help them reach their goals. Every day when I read, I think of this brand promise, and it guides my actions. You know, Coach K, one of the winningest coaches in college basketball, in fact, the winningest coach in college basketball, had a brand promise. And he described it with a fist that would make the collective unit of the players on his team perform better than any one individual. And the last part of his brand promise was player development over winning every single time. And it made him the winningest coach in college basketball. Most recently, the UCLA's women's basketball team won the NCAA championship. You know what the coach said was her leadership brand? Our talent is the floor, but our character is the ceiling. So, articulate your brand promise. You will find power, and your team will find power when it happens. Now let's go back and just end where we started, if that's okay. John Quincy Adams was the son of our founding father, John Adams. In 1817, he was Secretary of State. He secured Florida for the United States. He then served as the 6th President of the United States and then served in Congress. And while serving in Congress in 1830, Congress passed a rule, and it was introduced by the southern states. The rule was, if anything comes up, any discussion related to slavery, it will be tabled. You can't bring up the topic. Do you know what John Quincy Adams did? Every day he raised the petition. Every time he had a chance to speak, he raised the petition. He not only thought it was bad for the country, he thought it was a moral cause to cease slavery in the United States. And whether there was a rule or not, he raised the issue. He famously said this, which I think is his leadership brand. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. And I would say the same to you today. So as we end, remember, will you please, your words have immense power. You have the ability to change the belief window that hangs in front of people's perceptions and give them the power to believe in a future that they might not otherwise see. And if you will define your leadership brand and unhook the boat that you've been tying behind your race car and lead with purpose, lead with intent, having clearly defined who you can be as a leader, watch. You will carry the same influence as those that we've talked about today. Thank you very much for having me here with you. I appreciate it.